Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we're going to be going through the latest update. This one brings a lot of new things to the table, so make sure you stick around till the end of the video. We're going to go through some examples of what we got, we're going to go through some things you can build with them, and we're going to talk about something that may bring a absolutely whole new aspect to the game. But let's get going with the update notes. Here we are in the update notes, version 1.14.4, the saddle seat update, even though it brings us so much more than that. As always, I'm going to read the descriptions and go through my thoughts, so I know you can read, but maybe you'll find this interesting. So it says it introduces the new saddle seat, useful for bikes, sea-doos, snowmobiles, etc. Both seat only and seat with handlebar variants are included, so passenger seat and control seat. And you could see some good examples of how they kind of stacked them one behind another. Here it is on a tractor, and the handlebars themselves look great. Now this is the big part, the surprising part I want to say. As well as these new parts, we've added a new torque connector, similar to electric connectors. These are requested by players and are useful in situations where you want to have flexible power. We've also added a small robotic part which can transmit torque. Now, the powered takeoff, or PTO, I'm going to call it, has been something that myself and Sheppy5 and a couple of my other Discord server members and admin team have been requesting for a while now. And power takeoff is incredibly useful in real life, in tractors and all kinds of stuff. We're going to go through that in detail, but awesome. And it says they've also added a label to the handle and to viewing scopes. That's something I actually requested a bunch of times on my videos. Hopefully I won't take any credit, but if you guys are watching this, the developer team, thank you so much for this awesome game. Love these updates and love everything this brought. So down here we have the patch notes, and it says they added the saddle seats, they added torque connectors, they added handle and viewing scope labels, and the small robotic connector with torque. They also fixed a bunch of stuff. They fixed how fires burn. They pretty much fixed how the screens interact with fog, how the IR camera works through a viewing scope. So a lot of the viewing scope things that I talked about in my other videos with water and kind of weird things happening, it's all fixed. Of course, let's go take a look here in the game. So as you can see, first look at these new parts, they're beautiful. But remember, we did have them kind of leak at one point, and they kind of came out a little bit unexpectedly and then were quickly scrapped, so they may look familiar to some of you. So if we type in saddle, kind of like a horse saddle, actually at first when I saw a saddle seat, I thought that this was an update giving us the ability to ride horses, which is something I've also been asking for a while. But pretty much, here we have the saddle seat with handlebars. You can get in and out, of course. You can place rescued survivors. And what's neat is that it gives us all the information, all the things that all the seats have, including the headset audio, including headset video, so you get it all with this. And then of course this one just has a simple occupied node. So simple and much more complex and intricate with all kinds of stuff. So that's awesome. And what's really cool, if I delete this and delete this, is the actual seat part or handlebar part is just this. So it actually comes with a floating part there that you can then put all kinds of stuff in all of these locations. Okay, you obviously can't put it here, but look where you can put it. So you can easily put some kind of display down here. You can't quite put a key beneath there, but you could put a key coming out the front, for example, depending on what kind of arrangement you want. Like if you have a very simple creation, I suppose, you could probably just do that and kind of have a key there. Or if you have something more intricate planned, you can do something with a display. And that display, you can even do that, like what I showed on the top, if you want to program it just so your handlebar there doesn't, like there's no information loss there, but you can have it going all the way around. That'd actually be a pretty useful program to have. So anyways, these are these seats, and over here we have kind of the passenger seats, and as you saw in the pictures, you can stack them one behind the other. You can't put them side by side, but what is neat is when you have two of them like this, you could see that they take up 6 blocks. And why that's important is because that's how wide most of my cars are, and I know a lot of people will make their cars that wide just because that's also the width of, call it a steering wheel setup. So in an actual passenger car now, you can have the back seats be a bench seat using these kind of saddle seats. So quite cool and very useful. So that's awesome. Also, comparing to the other seats, you could see that they weigh just the passenger saddle weighs just 1 block, 1 weight more, and the other control saddle right here is 5, whereas something like this is 7. So you do gain a little bit of weight. Now, the power takeoff. This is what I gotta say is the unexpected bit of the update. And why this is super, super cool for me is because now you can actually translate power from a motor through this connector and out. And that is awesome. That just gives us the ability to make like transferring power to trailers, transferring power to mining equipment, you know. So if you search power, you can see everything that comes with an RPS. So now you can have any of these things powered going through one of these PTO. So you can have a propeller or rotor on a separate body attachable. You can make modular planes that kind of attach in nodes or whatever. You can even have a motor that just attaches via hoses and cables and PTO. So quite neat. And then over here, this is something I said I've been asking for. You can make the labels whatever you want, which is important because previously you can press on a handle and it would do something like open a door, but you'd have no idea it was going to open the door. You just had to guess. So now you could actually write door. And likewise with this, previously you had no idea if you're going to find yourself in a camera or you're going to find yourself in third dimension, but pretty much now you can say front camera or whatever, and it'll now show you that. Previously, when I showed this example, you may remember that inside the viewing scope, you did not see what the, you didn't see through this properly. It would, underwater, it would look all weird. There wouldn't be the right hues, there wouldn't be the right shading. It would be different than if you're actually underwater. Whereas now, it's as if you are underwater. So you see through the viewing scope the same thing the person sees swimming, which is more realistic. Previously, there wasn't gamma or hues or whatever. It was just lacking atmosphere, in my opinion. So they fixed it now. And actually, this was one of those weird things on even flying through the air, like this in this drone that I've just taken off over there. When viewed through the viewing scope, the numbers, if you remember, like the numbers around the screen here, would kind of have like a wave action, almost as if the view itself was underwater, and it would just kind of look off. Where now, everything looks normal. All the data is reading properly, all the numbers are reading right, and you don't have like strange interference from waves or whatever the case may be. So, looking good. Very good, actually. This is now, the viewing scopes are absolutely working properly, in my opinion, and have all the features that we would have kind of expected and hoped for. And now we got them. So really sweet. And they did fix infrared. That was one other thing. So we could try that out real quick. Of course, it's daylight. If we do make it night. Wow. Yeah, that looks awesome. So, right on. Funny enough, with the display, it's all black and white, grayscale. Whereas with the viewing scope, it's in color, which I don't mind. I actually like that. I think it's kind of useful, but it does kind of change the idea, I suppose, of the infrared, but seeing color and whatnot, but cool. The release of this handlebar and seat is kind of funny for me because I just kind of made this quad. It's still even unreleased. And now this idea of having kind of a moving pivot with this previously used control handle is no longer really required. Now, this still does work, and I may release it with it if I can't really find a good solution for it, but let's keep in mind that when you reduce bodies, you actually end up saving a lot of computing power. So one body creations do work much better. They perform and just kind of spawn nicer. So let's see how this would look with our new saddle seat. All right. So first of all, that seat part looks okay. Kind of floating on my microcontroller, but I'll live. And then over here, we can do whatever we want, including something like this, maybe even something like that. So that does look pretty cool. I suppose I could even do that. Too bad we don't have like the plates that I talked about, where it's just like a window but without the glass and maybe a little thicker, because getting a little bit of extra thickness on that would also be nice. But also, when in doubt, the rocket fuel, it's kind of circular, that might work too. Like, I'm just thinking, if I don't want to have a button there, then what would I use? But of course, this may also just be a solution, just to put that right there and kind of save the side like this. And of course, for aesthetics, maybe this looks better, though I'm not 100% convinced. Like, I'd still say my other version did look kind of sleek, but yeah, that might work. So I hop on here. Okay, do I aim at that? Alright, that'll take some getting used to. Keep in mind, aiming at the actual handlebar doesn't do anything, so you have to aim at the saddle itself. Click, and then we can access these things. Now, power I can click. Can't go much lower than that, so instrument panels there aren't the greatest. Like, if I had a button on the reverse location. Oh, see, I'm trying to click on the saddle, on that part again, the handlebar, but you got to click on the saddle part. Yeah, what is nice about this, other than kind of like glitching through, which is fine, it's regular Stormworks, our legs I mean, it is nice to be sitting upright. So on the scope of this, you could see kind of on the surface the difference. Yeah, the pre-made one does look more polished, I will say, versus mine. It looks a little janky with these things. Now, yes, I could XML mod it, but I didn't. So the polished handlebars do look kind of nice. In the front view, honestly, I might even say that this one does look better than this, which just kind of, like I said, kind of just looks janky. The seat itself, this, like the actual seating part, the saddle part, is a little different. Oops. Did a little bit of tweaks. The nice thing with this is that you could actually sit on the back. So you can have 2 people on it, where previously I was limited to 1 in the current configuration. And you can see that as far as operating it, it looks good and it works properly. I kind of liked what I did here with this now. You see here, I just put a slanted piece and this like friction pad just to kind of make it look a little more rounded. I'm sure there's better ways, and for sure there's XML modding ways, but overall, as far as seating goes on this particular quad, I think I will be leaving this like this and updating the rest of them, just because this does suit the game better, it does look right, and we get the added benefit of not using multiple bodies. Everything is in one body. The Sea-Doo can copy that exact same formula. In fact, this one is probably going to be even easier, just because you see the way I arranged this originally is that this part is a little bit elevated. So now all you got to do is put in the handle or seat or saddle or whatever we search, and voila, that would work except for that. And then that would work except for that. So could be a simple fix, something as easy as putting this right there and this right there. So now we still should be able to retain the ability to lift this Sea-Doo up onto a boat with a winch while keeping the handlebar and the functionality. Honestly, this one is a clear win, because where previously the handlebars were kind of impeding the buttons. In this case, it's clearly going to be visible. So in this case, if we go to this and sit on the saddle, perfect. You see the power, the reverse, release connectors, everything is right there. This just looks right. And seating on the back here looks right too. So we get the functionality, we get the ability to lift with the rope anchor. I love this. This is actually a fantastic update and a fantastic part. The last thing to look at is the power takeoff. So we have it here, the torque connector is what it's called. And honestly, you have a couple ways to work with it. So you can replace all of your electric connectors that you just made into working with the SIBTAT system. Well, you can scrap all that and make it into one of these. You could potentially add a third option in my case, or for some of you it'll be a second. You'll have the SIBTAT or you'll have the torque connector method. So you can connect with both and then you can make trailers with both. But keep in mind that you got to be able to connect it to the load path. Now in this case, my load path is right there, or transfer path or torque path or RPS path, and simply that will do the trick. If we start this truck up and just let it idle at RPS, you see that we get a very small RPS there. But if we go ahead and put it in drive and kick on cruise control and kind of slowly make our way back here, look at that. We're getting 3.7 RPS coming out of that connector right there. Which also means if you have something connected with that PTO, and I just plugged in the electric just so it doesn't go flopping everywhere, but look at this. It's actually able to replicate the exact same speed of the wheels, even though the wheel itself isn't on the actual vehicle. It's on an absolutely separate body, and here we are. Now where exactly you'll use it, I don't know, but one interesting thing is equipment like this. In real life, PTO is used by all kinds of farm equipment where you have like combines and things that cut up grass and construction equipment. So in this case, using a drill for the minerals is the closest thing you could probably get to replicating a system using this as a power takeoff. Of course, in this case you have to be driving, which doesn't make any sense. So you'd have to make a neutral gear that also puts power through the drive shaft to this separately, so you'd have to make a separate power piping, but that's okay. You can do all that with clutches and whatnot. The idea is it allows us now to open up a whole thing that potentially gives us an absolutely new aspect to the game, and that's what I was trying to hint on earlier, is this scratches the surface as to what we can possibly get with a power takeoff. Now that we've got this kind of as our starting point, and we got the other kind of pivot or hinge piece, whatever you want to call it, that has the power in itself. So you can actually now have multi-bodies and multi-links and all kinds of stuff. You can make a whole chain of power transferring through. I probably won't recommend that just because of the game limitations and having too many bodies, but you can try. The idea here is that I'd love to see all kinds of other things that the power takeoff can be applied to. And I'm talking about winches that use RPS, and I know the developers talked about this and saying things like it may not be possible, and I don't know the programming behind it, but the way I see it is it would just be a direct correlation of RPS to the speed of the winch. And honestly, you can't go on to infinity. The winch has to max out at some point. So even if you're at 100 RPS, the winch is still only going to just go as fast as one of these would go, is the way I would do it. So that is a possibility and a thing that I would love. Another thing, pumps. Yes, we do actually have the impeller pump that uses power, but look how small it is. Oh, like it's perfect. I love that. It gives us exactly something that we could use RPS and PTO, but in bigger form. And honestly, we are missing a large pump. Like we have this, and it's called our large fluid pump, and we have this impeller pump. So this one is the bigger version of that has the RPS power, which I would guess or say that, yeah, it is kind of larger or largest pump. But imagine getting one like the size of this winch, like a big pump. And I'm talking something for the ballast tank, something for mass fluid transfer. Maybe we don't want that in the game, or maybe the developers don't want that necessarily because it may be like overpowered, OP, and you may put it in your ballast tank and poof, you pump out all the water real quick instead of putting a bunch of these large fluid pumps. But you know, the fact we have a winch this large with all kinds of mass and all kinds of length, 600 meters, I don't see why we wouldn't get a large pump, something huge, and let us use it to our heart's desire for all kinds of stuff. Now, these are just some ideas of the existing parts we have, but like I said, if you type in power, you can see a lot of the things that transfer RPS and a lot of the mechanics behind it. But it would be great to get other things, right? You got your centrifugal separators, so you can now have a PTO for that. The fluid jet itself, also like a propeller, uses that. Steam whistle, I don't know why that's here, but regardless, there are things and aspects in the game that we already have, but kind of just like this, that uses the drill shaft. It would be epic to now take it to the next level and get us like 5 new things that have power takeoff, that have RPS power, and that can be used with this new awesome system. Of course, we also have our generators, so you could just have a generator at the end of a power takeoff that you can use to charge up your system. But there's some other outside the box things, like a saw blade. If they did add the ability to chop down trees for our forestry industry, wow, imagine a saw blade that then becomes a log that we then transport. Or, like I said, having a pump, so a compressor. We could have all kinds of different pumps. We can have all kinds of different fans, maybe. So there's definitely things that can be used with this, and then there's a whole heap of other things. And I'm talking about creative things, like if you decide to make the back of this truck like removable. So you'd actually come and you'd be able to add this as an attachment to a small truck like this, boom, with a PTO, and now you have extra wheels, or whatever the case may be. And you could apply that to planes, where you make a plane that can have extra engines or propellers added or stuff like that. But I gotta say, this is an awesome update. It brings a bunch of fixes, it brings a bunch of new possibilities, and it brings new parts. So we have a door opening to the PTO stuff, we have new creations we could make with the seats, and it fixed the viewing scopes and stuff. So awesome. Love updates like this. This is a huge one. Make sure you check it out. Let me know in the comment what you think is your favorite part, or what you think the most applicable use for the PTO would be. And I want to thank my supporters, my YouTube members, and my Discord server boosters. Thank you so much for supporting me, and they get to enjoy special benefits. They already get to use the latest amphibious truck and certain other things, so check that out if you are interested. And I do want to thank each and every one of you for watching, for making these videos make sense for me to make. So hopefully you give it a like, subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you next time. Happy Stormworksing.